Hey, Kurt, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Sure. So my name's Kurt Folk. I currently work for a company called Click, which is a software company specializing in end-to-end data. That's data integration and data analytics. And then some interesting background on myself is I've only really been in sales for the last 5 years. Before that, I was a full-time pastor in ministry. So I've listened to the podcast on procurement to sales. And even before I was a pastor, I was also in procurement. So I run this interesting gamut of things that I've seen and done. And now here I am, 5 years in sales and enjoying every moment of it.
Well, you're the first pastor on the phone.
Yes.
So there's
Yes.
got to be a story behind it. Come on.
But the quick take when people ask me is, well, how do you? And I was like, well, I sold Jesus for 8 years, so now I just sell software, and that makes people laugh and uncomfortable all at the same time. And I love to sit in that space. So yeah, yeah.
Well, they're both kind of faith-based professions, right? You have to have faith in your product and what you're doing.
That's very true. And I had looked at like part of the role into ministry was I was very focused on the music end of that aspect. I led music at church and all that stuff, but was seeing the problems that people had and figuring out how I could learn what I needed to study to kind of help people work to solve some of those problems. So that's the same approach that I really take to software sales and sales in general, which is a good point about, solving problems and having faith is like, hey, this is a product I need to believe in, right? And I need to see how it solves people's problems so that when I can actually approach it that way and say, hey, you have this problem, I think we can help. It makes it for me much easier to sell than just trying to jam another thing down people's throats or another software that they don't really need. A there's a problem, we have a potential solution, and then it becomes about kind of forming that relationship and showing them that we can do what we're saying we're doing.
But what was the impetus to go from a career that most would imagine would be orthogonal to sales, not
Yeah,
economically driven?
right. No, 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 no,
Or maybe it was the
no,
kids. Was it the
no.
kids?
Well, so yeah, I have three kids, a fourth on the way. And really, getting deep, the way that pastoring works, and it doesn't always have to work like this, but a lot of it does, is you work a normal day, but the people that you are ministering to and working with, they're working a normal day. So you actually need to spend the time after they're working to spend time with them. So now all of a sudden you're putting in an absorbent amount of hours when you're not at home with your family, and that's when meetings happen and all that different stuff. So the impetus for moving out of pastoral ministry was like I was exhausted, I was burnt
Okay.
out, I had young children. Economically, like we were struggling with that many kids, we owned a house and all this stuff, but I had school debt and all that stuff, and it was like this is hard for all manner of reasons, and there's other things to go into too, but I was just worn out and tired. And the change came in a very specific conversation that I had with a friend sitting down in Philadelphia in Reading Terminal Market. Um, I was talking about making this career change and what was I going to do, and I didn't know. And he said, like, well, you've been in procurement. He's like, but you sitting at a desk, like crunching numbers and moving things around, doesn't seem to make sense. But you interacting with people, talking to people, listening to people, giving ideas back to them. He's like, in sales, that makes complete sense. He's like, the other one, it's where you landed, but I don't think it's where you were supposed to land ultimately. And I took that conversation. I was like, he's right. And then started thinking back through my mom when I was young, be like, man, you could sell anything, right? As a smart aleck little kid. But my father-in-law being in sales for the last 40 years too, and always said, like, I think you could have a career in sales. So it was all the culmination of how do I increase my earning potential, how do I find something where I get to talk, interact, build rapport, and build trust with people, and then find something to believe in? And that kind of led me to the sales role
And
or a sales role.
do you now feel that sales is your calling?
Great question. It depends on the day.
Where we
Right?
are in
We
the
all
quarter.
or in the where we are in the quarter, right? Certain days it does not feel like a calling, but no, for it is a unique ability of where I sit in this space uniquely where I am extremely administratively minded and somewhat type A. And yet I have this music background too that you have to be creative. So sales has given me this unique spot to sit in to take some of the administration stuff that you have to have in sales to be able to move to get things done, but then figure out, how do I want to package this? How do I want to prospect? How do I want to reach out creatively? How do I want to create videos for LinkedIn that really allow that creative side to kind of come in and shine? And in the last 6 months, I've really worked on building kind of LinkedIn content around that, that has really put me in this beautiful place that I'm like, I'm accessing this creative side and I get to do this. I'm accessing this administrative side and I get to do this. I'm getting to sell. I'm watching myself build trust and rapport with people. And it's exciting when you move deals ahead and then when you land deals, that it has moved into this, like, this is what I am supposed to do with my life right now. And I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, because I always thought and noticed that the salespeople who felt like it was their calling, that it was more than a job, that they just enjoyed it for whatever reason, different motives, that those people really could excel. Probably in any profession, when you look at it as a calling versus an occupation.
True. Yeah. An occupation you
You
show up for,
show up,
right?
you do
You
what you're
show up.
told.
When it's a calling or something, it's something you look forward to. It's something that you look forward to, the challenges that are going to be thrown your way. And some of that I think is occupation, but some of that's just mindset of the individual too. Like when we realize that challenges are thrown at our way, not to just aggravate us, but they actually make us better and become better people. If you can have that viewpoint, and if you're having an okay day and those things happen, right, then you can tackle those to say, like, what am I going to learn through this and get out of this that makes me a better person, makes me a better salesperson, and makes me a better account manager to actually help my current customers and my future customers.
And have there been any conflicts with either your beliefs, your character? Because uh, sales is viewed not in the highest esteem by people who don't understand it.
True. Very good point. So I'll put somebody on notice here. Larry Levine, right? Larry Levine wrote a book called Selling from the Heart.
Yeah.
And I found that not right away, but I found that a little bit into this selling thing. And I read it and I was like, this is the piece that I've been missing, where I had felt there was some tension sometimes. It was like, how do I create long-term customers, and realizing that what I do with my customers now, you never know when 5, 8, 10 years from now, you end up finding them again or selling them again. So building the right relationship, not being crummy and sleazy in sales, is actually beneficial. And I have found that um, I tend to lean into being overly honest with people, where maybe I get more in trouble with my management than I ever do with the customer. Because I just try to be upfront, like, hey, this is going to make me more money, but it doesn't make sense for you. Hey, I could sell you these professional services, but I think you're going to do a lot better with one of our partners on a cost ratio, what their knowledge is, and all that different stuff, which doesn't help click now or help my job now, but ultimately helps build the trust into whatever, when I come back to them for something else, or when they come to me, there's a trust built there that, like, I've earned, right? It doesn't just happen. And I am frankly tired of sleazy salespeople. I can tell when they call me, and I
Well,
just hate it.
yeah, but in B2B, do you ever really see it? Successful salespeople, not people trying to get a meeting, trying to push in. Honestly, I never saw it in B2B. I saw it in B2C.
Like, what the have I seen sleazy customers in the midst of that,
No, no, not customers,
or not sleazy
sales.
salespeople?
And
Yeah,
sleazy is kind of real pejorative word for it, but people who don't care about the customer and just want what they want.
I've seen some,
Have you?
and they don't generally, and then that comes down to company culture too, right? Like if it's
Get
not, if
pushed.
the
Yeah.
company culture pushes that, then you're going to be successful and do it. If the company's like, that's not what we're about, then you won't do it. My current company has an extremely high retention rate on customers, which is really good. So people that are trying to do that, they're not going to last long. They'll go somewhere else. So I see it from time to time. But the other thing that I generally think about in building trust and relationships is like I can't do everything myself, right? Is you have to know when to give pieces up to other people and let them do their job. But in that too, we also need to trust those people and we need to build trust with those people. So I figured out how to take the people that help me figure out why this quote isn't working or have to reorganize this thing in a way that makes sense. Like I build a relationship with them. Sometimes it involves like, hey, let me take you out for a few beers. That when I reach out to them and say, hey, I'm having this struggle, they jump on it right away because I built a relationship and a friendship with them. And they're like, he's one of the good ones. Right. And there's that tension too in sales. Sometimes that's like, this person works for me and I just need them to do what I need them to do so I can get this quote out so I can make this money so I can make the company profitable. But like then it just I hate that. Like I want to be able to realize everybody's a human and we're all working hard. We all have our own crap that we're dealing with and we all have our own struggles and managers. So like how do I make their job a little easier? How do I be nice? How do I appreciate them and all the people that help me get stuff done? Because I can't redline. Right? I can't do all that stuff. So I need those people. So it's about building relationships with customers, but it's also about building relationships internally too.
Well, what's been the hardest part over the last 5 years as far as adjusting and becoming great at sales?
Yeah, I think well, and I'll go back even further. I think there was a time and period in my life where I don't think that sales would have worked well because I was not great at receiving feedback. Or I might have looked like I was great at receiving feedback, but I wasn't actually great at actually doing it or taking it right away. So that, you know, that I made a decision when I made to sales. And I remember making this decision in my mind, like, if I don't understand something, I need to ask right away, not pretend I understand and nod and have that snowball into some giant disaster 6 months from now, but do that now. So I think that early when I started, that was the hardest part of making a switch of me that was the guy who used to just go, yep, I get that. Even if I didn't, I was like, I'll probably figure it out. Well, yeah, no. Like I needed to be upfront and honest with that to start so that I could really understand. So that was like one of the harder parts was making that switch in my mind. And then I think, honestly, I think one of the hardest parts is figuring out how to turn your brain off sometimes so that you actually are rested and refueled and you're not burning out in this job too, because sales is constant. There's always more you could be doing to prospect, to find leads, to score leads. There's always more you can do to be driving a deal ahead. But at some point, you need to rest. So, figuring out how to turn that off, or figuring out how, if you get that idea while you're out walking with your kids, to quick take the note, set a reminder to look at that note the next morning and move on. And that's been the hardest time is figuring out that work-life balance because there's always more that you could be doing. There's always a number to hit. There's always a bigger number to hit, even if you've hit your goal, because you could just make more money. There's always that. So, how do you find that work life balance and create a healthy environment for you and your family so that you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor?
Now, on the feedback side, how far did you take the musician thing? Was that, did you get to
I
perform in
mean,
front of audiences or was it just self enjoyment or?
so for back in college days, I performed in front of some small audiences and did some small open mics and all that stuff. And then when you move into church, right, if you move into kind of evangelical church, there's this whole worship ministry, music movement thing. So really every Sunday I was in front of people, like trying to not be in front of people because it's this weird balance of pride versus church and all this different stuff. But I was leading music almost every Sunday at the church that I was pastoring at. So that's kind of as far. And I'm don't look me up on iTunes. That's I'll say it's just old.
Where I was going with that was, didn't you get a ton of feedback there, both from the other musicians and the audience?
Yes, yeah, there was feedback back and forth about how to improve and all that different stuff. And in my wonderful youth, it was like
You mean
they don't know
yesterday?
the kind of artist I'm trying to be. Right? You kind of always have, if you're that type of
They
person,
don't
I work,
get me yet.
they don't get me. And like then maybe in a few days I'd be like, maybe they're not wrong, but it took 4 to 5 days, and that's not a great timeline to actually improve oneself. Let alone move that into marriage. That doesn't work so well either. So you have to figure out how to take feedback and go back and forth and be malleable
Yeah.
and teachable.
And have you been? I take it you've approved that the ability to take it, apply it, and in sales, the best really learn to crave it and appreciate it as what it is. It's a gift.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's been one of the things that I've been pushing into in the last 3 months is going back to customers, um, recently closed customers, customer I've been working with for a while, and say, hey, give me feedback on me. Like how could I improve my outreach to you? How often is too much? When we did this sale, what worked well? What did you really like about me? What do you think I could have done better? Like, in doing that right after the close of something and doing it a few months after, like, have I stayed in touch enough? Like, has this been clear communication after? And that's not always fun, and even trying to do that with the people I lose, and they think it's really weird, um because they're like, well, yeah, but we don't really want to talk to you anymore because we told you no. But it's like, this is how I improve myself and become better. To Was it me? Was it how I pushed or kind of showed our value? Where did I miss? Right. And those are the hardest to get, but those are the most valuable to get. If you can dig into why you lost the deal. And sometimes it's not on me, sometimes it's the product or the price, but I'll think a lot of times if I'm doing my job right and trying to be better, those things become minimal, and I can just continue to improve how I approach things.
And I don't know your space that well, but what I do know about it is it's hyper competitive. Is that your perception as well?
Yes. So I sat on the analytics side of the business for the last 3 years. Things have changed where now we're selling all of it. But that analytics space is hyper competitive. It's oversaturated. There's so many big competitors out there, the elephants in the room, like a Microsoft and a Salesforce Tableau. And then there are smaller ones too that have their niches and all that different things. So it's hyper competitive. And I had to learn when I lost the deal and lost it to somebody to say, what could I have done better? How do I learn more about that product, that other product, and our product, so that I can position what we do or do differently really well?
Yeah. And what do you think your strongest sales characteristic is?
I think my strongest sales characteristic is I do seem to build trust and rapport really quickly. I find the first 5 minutes of a phone call while people are still logging in crucial to my success. Can I get people laughing? Can I get them to share something personal? If I share something personal, to level the playing field and be like, this isn't this weird sales relationship. This is, I'm sitting in my I'm sitting in my office at home, you're sitting in your office at home, or maybe your office there. We're all humans. We all had a struggle with a child earlier this morning. Like, we're real. And that just sets the stage to, I think, have a more open and honest conversation, um, to get into the meat of what needs to happen and to build that trust. And I've been told by a few times where there's been struggles and I get a phone call with one specific person, I just break it down for them. Here's what I'm about. Here's what I'm trying to do. Whether you pick us or not, I don't care. I want you to have the right solution. And the feedbacks come back like, I believed you. And I'm like, well, it's true. If you buy the wrong solution and it frustrates you, you're going to leave. And then that doesn't make any of us look good. So, like, let's get you the right solution. I hope and think it's mine. But if it isn't, let's high five and part ways. And I think just being able to be okay with losing deals has helped too. Like I just want to build that trust and rapport. And I want to figure out how to just hit the mark on those things.
And what's your view on competitiveness?
In as much as
Well,
what?
most salespeople are competitive.
Mhm.
They, they want to win. if you win, you get rewarded. If you
Yeah, yeah,
lose,
yeah.
you tend not to get rewarded. Right.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I think there's always the initial part of you in sales. At least I think that when you find out it's competitive and you find out who it is, there's like there's the deep sigh. You'd love it if they just loved you and only you. But then it's like, okay, it's then switching that into not giving up and switching it into like, okay, it's time to refresh myself about what I know, what I need to know about my competitor, and how to make sure that we're positioning how I'm positioning myself as a salesperson, how I'm positioning our solution as different, and making sure that I'm laying the groundwork for things that I know that we do better or we do that the other company doesn't do. And then that becomes an exciting phase to kind of really see, did I do a good job of convincing them of that?
Yeah. And do you get emotionally attached to deals?
Oh, I want to find the sales rep who doesn't and have a long conversation about them. And they're probably emotionally unattached to a lot of other things in life too. But but yeah, you put blood, sweat, and tears into these things, and it's hard. I worked on one this spring and summer, traveled down to this location, 3.5, 4 hours twice. Really got in good. We had an amazing demo. We had people whispering in our ear, "You guys are the tool. This is it." We couldn't believe it. They totally got what made us stand apart from our other competitors. And 2 weeks later, we're like, "Hey, sorry, we went with this other competitor we knew we were up against." And then even the like, "Hey, we loved you," all this different stuff. And it was like, it was just crushing. And then you go through the like, what could I have done better? How could I have laid this? What was I going on? What are the takes? But yeah, it's crushing when you lose those things, when you spend that much time and put hopes in that. And when you generally start to figure out the, potential commission you're going to make in your head and know that it's disappeared. that's that stings too.
And did the past your time help you read people? Because I'm sure you run into almost the identical situation where people are talking, but what they're saying is different than what's going on in their head.
Yeah, I would say that I have. I would like to think I've gotten better at reading people. I would say that that is not easy on Zoom. It's much easier in person.
Yeah.
Um, and it's impossible when they don't have their video on, which is I generally ask for that, which is why this customer that I lost, like we pushed, we want to be in person, so that we could read the room. And on the few of those we've done, it completely changes everything, just how you can read people. um so it's gotten good to kind of, I've gotten better at reading kind of these people, or making sure that I also have people with me scattered throughout the room that can help read the room as well about where we need to take things. um I still have a lot to improve on
Yeah.
and learn, but don't we all?
And what do you wish you did 5 years ago that you're doing today in sales?
Yeah, I wish that I well, let me put it this way. When I started in sales, I was working for a large IT reseller that had thousands and thousands and thousands of SKUs. And you could only know a little bit about a lot. So one of the position when I wanted to change and I moved into the company that I'm at now, I knew that it was a smaller profile because I really wanted to get to know those products well. Um, and I don't think I knew that at the start, but that is something that I wish I'd known, is like, focus on a smaller group of products, know them well, know your competition well, know how to speak, you know, very well about these things, lay potential traps about competitors and do that. And I didn't know that at the start. I didn't know that that was where I needed to sit, and that's how my mind worked to be able to really do well. And looking back, I see it now. I've always done better when I know a subgroup of things and have a couple things to focus on. I can really dig in. When it's like trying to grab at all these different things, it just becomes overwhelming, and you depend on a lot of other people to know a lot more than you, and that isn't easy too. I gotta know my stuff. So let me summarize that because I rambled a bit. There
Okay,
you go.
good.
That's fine. So you asked the question. I'll pause. So I think what I learned is for my style, and I think people need to ask themselves this, like, am I okay with knowing a little bit about a lot of things, or am I going to do better digging into certain things or a certain product set and knowing it really well to build my confidence in sales and to go after that? And I think that sometimes we don't do enough self-reflection on the type of salesperson that we want to be or the type of person we are to get to that. And I learned that in my first position in moving into this one, that is where I was going to be able to sink my teeth in. So that's what I wish I would have known at the start, because I think I would have had a faster uptick in how I was learning to sell and how I was going to get better, and how I was going to get more at bats.
And I'm sure you have observed a lot of salespeople in the last 5 years. What do you think separates the very best from the rest?
I do think, and going back to your thing, I think in B2B, I think it is the salesperson who doesn't have plans on just climbing the ladder from next company to next company to make more money, is humble enough to say, like, there are things I need to learn, and I want to find the right management and the right mentors to really build into that, and know that eventually it will probably come time for me to move on, but I'm going to really enjoy what I have now to do that. And I think just remaining humble and ever coachable and always learning more about your product. Like, yay, great. I hit my quota for the year halfway through. There's still way more that I can learn, so that the next couple that come up, I can do an even better job getting them. And that goes back to, like, never, I think, summing up, never being satisfied with what you know, always seeking to know more, become a better version of yourself.
And how do you do that daily? Do you have a particular routine or system, or is it just books and podcasts, or what?
This is where the type A personality mashes with the creative, and I fight systems constantly.
Do you?
Here's what my day should look like. And I hate being told I have to fit into a rhythm. I hate it. But I have found that if I do some sort of reading in the morning, articles, if I do my training in the morning, my brain retains all of that information and I can grow from there. Doing it every morning is the constant fight. But listening to podcasts like yours, there's others out there about how to think about selling and what's happening with content creation and what's happening with marketing and doing all that if it's an area I want to grow in. And then continually looking for new trainings or taking certifications for what I sell to try to just get better at understanding it so that I can speak confidently about it.
And do you use a lot of analogies, either between music and sales or being a pastor and sales, just to kind of correlate in your brain about what to do and how to be good at it? Or is it a whole new field?
It's a whole new field. I mean, I generally go to car analogies or sports analogies, and I'm not a
Okay.
car guy or a sports guy, but just almost everybody can understand one of those. Um, but I think what I pull from that time as a pastor is realizing, like, people are, like we talked about it earlier, people are telling you one thing, but underlying is another thing. And how do you keep asking open-ended questions to really pick at and get to the bottom of it, so that you're really finding out the truth of what's going on? Or are you just quote fodder? Or are you just that? And that's been a key to kind of saying, like, you're telling me this, but I'm going to keep going to make sure that really is the crux of the situation if you're really looking for something that I have to offer.
Well, because I've never been on the pasture side, but I've been on the sales side.
Right.
It's not that they're misleading you or being deceptive. They don't know.
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
And
They don't know
I
what
got
they
to
don't know.
assume that they're like that on the pasture side, that they've got an issue, a challenge,
Yeah,
and they think it's someone else. It's typically right.
exactly. If only this person fixed
Would
this, then it would
change,
work.
I'd be fine.
Right. And I've learned to, as people kind of give you kind of what's going on, I take copious notes and I'm kind of reflecting that in my head, and I'll go, so okay, let me summarize in my own words what you said. And sometimes it's a little more rough around the edges, but it cuts to the heart of the problem. They go, that's it. I'm like, okay, good. Now that we know that that is it, and I did hear you well, with a little bit more to it. Let's keep digging into that piece, because like I sarcastically added this piece on, but it seems to have resonated with you. Tell me about management's view on this. Are they actually concerned about this, or are you pushing this thing forward and you're on your own? Because we can help you if you're on your own, but we need to know where all the players sit so that we can actually make you the champion in this thing. And when we land this thing, everybody's high-fiving you that great job bringing so and so in. I said, how do we make you look like a success?
Right. Hey, Kurt, really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Sure. So there's two things going on. You can find me on LinkedIn, Kurt Folk. It's spelled with a K, and then my last name is F, as in Frank, OCHT. Also on YouTube, I started something a couple months ago called KPIs, which is Kurt's People Interviews. And since I'm in the data space, I thought it was pretty clever. So usually there's a new video posted on YouTube or LinkedIn every week. So I'd love a subscription or follow there to kind of learn about what's going on in the data field. And I'm just starting to interview some salespeople about their best tips and tricks, much like you, Brian.